Welcome, everyone. This is Lisa Edinburgh, Chair of the Westborough School Committee. This is Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, January 4th, 2022. 23. Thank you very much. This meeting of the Westborough School Committee is called to order. Please stand if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of the Republic for which it stands, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us this evening. I'd like to notify everyone in the room with us tonight that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed by Westborough TV. School committee meetings are available for remote viewing or listening on Westborough TV's government channels, Verizon 28 and Charter 192, and online on the Westborough TV YouTube channel. Thank you to Westborough TV for covering the broadcast this evening. We have with us tonight Superintendent Amber Bach, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Danielle Mayer, Director of Finance and Administration David Gordon, Vice Chair of the Westborough School Committee Steve Durrett, School Committee members Kristen Vincent and Steve Batchelor. Raghunandan is unable to attend this evening, as well as our student representative Aratrika Ghosh is not here this evening. And also, Recording Secretary Jen Benton is watching from home. But we do have staff from Westborough TV here, and I'd like to personally welcome everyone sitting in front of us and those watching from home. Our agenda for this evening is as follows. We'll begin with an approval of minutes from December 14th, 2022 regular session meeting, then hear from Amber Bach with the superintendent's report, followed by the assistant superintendent's report. Then we'll hear from the Director of Finance and Administration's report. We will then continue the meeting with the school committee member reports, followed by the building project updates. We'll then potentially hear from some citizens for citizens' requests, followed by an update about the Universal Design for Learning, continuing with another capital planning update, specifically the 5-year and 10-year altered improved plan, then a discussion about the Buildings and Grounds Department and the award bid for a long-term capital plan. We'll continue with an update about the AFC meeting discussion of an upcoming superintendent's visit, and soon after we'll hear about we may actually skip an item on our agenda because we don't have information about emergency shelter placement update. Continuing our meeting, we'll review and discuss our school committee annual goals. And finally, we'll end our regular session meeting with an Aspet Valley Collaborative quarterly update. Then we'll move into an executive session meeting and conclude with an adjournment for this evening. Let's begin with an approval of minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from December 14th, 2022 regular session?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
4-0 for being present. And we'll move right along to the superintendent's report. Amber?
Welcome back, everybody. Happy 2023. We are in day 2 of a return. So yesterday was full of lots of energy and today everyone's dragging. So that is the methodology of what it means to come back from vacation. So the week is actually, for the 2 days it's been, off to a smooth start. People really stepped back and relaxed. It's very interesting the number of people I spoke to on the ground out in the buildings that just took time to just be with family, have quiet time, relax, read books, binge watch TV. People just took time to regroup and enjoy the holidays. So in terms of talking to faculty and students as I was kind of visiting around, it feels like it was a very good vacation for everyone. Between Daniel and I, we've been at all the buildings over the last 2 days already. So I was at 3 buildings today. I was able to be at Hastings, Mill Pond, and Fales. I was at the high school yesterday and Gibbons at the end of the day today. So it's important that we're back around circulating, just kind of checking in on return. Things feel very, very productive. The weather's in our favor, which helps, of course. Mild weather is always a benefit for snow days, and the only people ever upset about that are the seniors, so they'll get a few days, hopefully. We have winter sports up and running. I know our Trika usually does a really nice job to update you, but I'll just share that we closed out a very productive fall season. We then had a really nice winter concert season, headed into break, and now our winter athletics are up and running. And so it's a busy and long season. So they are off to a fairly good start, actually. So I want to just call that out, and I want to just acknowledge our athletic director, Johanna DiCarlo, really doing a nice job getting backup transportation, continuing to be an issue to make sure that we can get student athletes to their competitions. And she's done some nice job to do the carpooling that we mentioned as needed for 3 of the outings, probably for 1 or 2 of our teams. But hopefully we won't need it, but there's a plan in place so that our competitions will still happen. And I guess lastly, I would just provide a highlight regarding an upcoming event. We'll push out a communication probably again tomorrow, but we've reached the point of our ribbon cutting ceremony for the Fales School, which is just an important benchmark for all of us. So on Sunday at noon, we will be hosting a community-wide event, and I encourage you to invite friends, family, people who would like to see the building and get a look through it. It will have a brief program where we'll do a ribbon cutting and some acknowledgements and some people there to talk about the importance of the process. And then it will be open to the public to visit and see how the building turned out. So that will be this Sunday, beginning at noon to 2. So that is my report for the 2 whole days we've been back.
Great. Daniel, do you have something for us?
Just one update. I want to mention again that the Martin Luther King Junior Community Celebration is coming up on January 16th. The planning group, which I'm a member of, got together today. We're very excited for the event. It's an evening event this year. People have come in the past. It's been in the morning, so I just want to remind people that it is at 6:30 in the evening, and in large part that's because we have 2 different exciting sets of performers coming. One will be sort of this one-act play that you can see up here. That's one person, one-act play by Ron Jones. It's going to be a thoughtful, provocative performance, and then we're going to have a very lively, upbeat Boston-based a cappella group that's coming. It has one of our graduates who's a member of the group, Ball in the House. So we anticipate that it'll be a very fun and celebratory event. So hope that we're going to get good attendance.
I encourage that as well, and want people to know that you can invite people from other communities. Again, it's the regional area event. I'm not sure what the next closest community is that hosts one, and so I think it's been at this point our 4th annual?
It's our 5th.
Our 5th annual, and I think a really nice highlight to be participants with that, with Westborough Connects and the extended.
Yeah, it's the Interfaith Clergy, it's the Central Maths Connections and Faith group. It's a great group. Coordinating and putting it on, we spend a better part of 11 months, putting this together. So we're excited for it, but that's my only update.
Well, thank you. Dave?
No reports tonight. Excuse me. No reports tonight.
Okay.
You do want to celebrate the fact that you have your binder in front of you. Everyone hold it up. Small moment of celebration when we actually get the budget produced in both hard copy and online. So you always are first to receive it. I just want to thank Dave and the team.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should give a shout out to Kathleen Lungarini, who really took the whole book on, essentially by herself, with all of us piecing it together, and her doing the recruitment effort from the writing, and she did a great job her first time doing it. So again, big shout out to Kathleen for helping us, but hope you have it and hope you enjoy it, and if you have any questions, please let us know.
Some good reading for us. Yes. Keep everyone very busy. Okay, so we'll move right along to our school committee reports. I actually received a report from Aratrika Ghosh, so I'm going to start with that, our student liaison. She writes, I hope everyone is having a good new year and transition back to school. I want to report that at the high school, all of the students are happy to be back to their regular classrooms and are overall excited about all of the renovations done in the areas of the high school that were previously closed off. Additionally, civics class in the history wing is in the process of working with administration to update school policy, mainly geared towards making the school community even more connected than it already is, and we hope to hear about any changes made soon. Lastly, as scholarship season is starting to open up, I would encourage all seniors and juniors to check their emails and the counseling department website to keep up with all updates. So that was the message from Aratrika Ghosh, our student liaison. And we'll move on to school committee reports. Steve Batchelor?
No, nothing to report tonight.
Kristen Vincent?
I don't have anything to report either, thank you.
Okay.
I'll wait.
Steve Durrett's going to wait for the building update. And I just want to welcome everyone back. We're excited to be back into the swing of a new year. It feels fresh and we're ready to bring it on. So I'm just going to move right along to building project update. Steve?
Hello and good evening and Happy New Year to everybody. The discussion point, as Amber brought up, is the ribbon cutting ceremony this Sunday, January the 8th. It's also an open house from 12 to 2 o'clock. And we hope that all those who are interested in the work product that we spent so much time and money on will come and have a look at the school. One of the things that we discussed at the last meeting was some concerns I had about what was going on with our solar credits, et cetera, and working with the town manager and others, we've worked out with at least getting National Grid's billing, we think, straightened out, although there were a couple of glitches even at that. So with particularly with relatively poor weather for solar, as you might think, it's been sort of gray for 2 weeks. But I do want to comment on the system as it has been installed. From the beginning to now, it's created 693,000 kilowatt hours on behalf of the town. And although seasonally it's doing about half of the demand for this month, as soon as we get good weather, that'll come back up again, which is kind of amazing to think that, with that stuff on the roof, we've almost, and we will, over an annual cycle, basically not need any other energy for the school. A couple of things remain, as those who are close to the project understand. Although the framework for the shade structure is there, they are not quite done yet. At least they weren't last weekend. With the I guess it's open planking on the roof to finish. And at this point, we're still adjusting the antifreeze level in the outside wells for the geothermal system. Although it's running and we're passing water through the wells to remove air and to, as the air is removed, to increase the amount of antifreeze in the system. We're still not using it yet. And of course, the building is otherwise using the backup system, which is propane powered, and done very well, I think. So with all of that going on, we look forward to the ribbon cutting. And the final story for the project is the final cost accounting for the project in order for the town to get its remaining money of its grant from the state in our pocket. And to do that, we need to do the final accounting, which began, or at least is on, stated to have begun on the 1st of January this year. So again, all of this stuff is coming to fruition, having started the original discussions and work on this project in 2015. So none of it appears overnight, as we all know from other projects the town has done. Thank you.
Any questions for Steve? Okay. Thank you very much for the report. It's good to get an update each time. It's exciting. Okay, so I'm going to move on to citizens' requests. And are there people here for citizens' request? Okay, so I'm going to just read our policy. As a reminder, we have a policy regarding citizens' requests. Some important pieces of this policy include that you must be a current resident of Westborough. Speakers are allowed to address the school committee about issues within the school committee's purview. Westborough School District policy or budget, to name a couple. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak to the school committee. Written comments longer than 3 minutes may be presented to the presiding chair before or after the meeting. You are welcome to hand me additional comments in writing now or send them via email, and I will share them with the other school committee members. Public comment by residents at this meeting is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It is an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within the school committee's authority. Our role is to listen carefully to what you have to share with us tonight. Clapping, cheering, calling out, or any other noise following a speaker is not allowed. A reminder that if not following the policy, this may cut into your time. Additionally, I want to remind members of the school committee that when making a point of order, please address your concern to the chair initially rather than to the speaker. Okay, so we're going to move right along. Mr. Conklin, are you here for this? Feel free to state your name and a street address and speak into the microphone.
Boyd Conklin, 8 Water Street. So I'm focused on moving to implement the rescinding of the Westborough Climate Action Plan. And for purview, for instance, school buildings, the Hastings HVAC system can be done without triggering the Massachusetts Agricultural Access Board and or the American Disabilities Act ADA requirements. I think it's possible. Find the assessed value of the building in question, just the building, not including the land, and you can spend 1/3 of the value over a 3-year period, or comparably 1/9 of the assessed value per year, not to exceed 1/3 of the assessed building value in any 3-year period. Replace cost-benefit analysis, replace existing heating and cooling systems, oil and natural gas based without worrying about the electrification replacement of all current systems. So this is the climate action plan that goes with the library building and the school buildings. No solar, no air source or ground source heat pumps, no new electrification of water heating or heating ventilation or air conditioning systems. And once again, no triggering of the ADA requirements if you keep within those budget levels for those buildings, which for Hastings seems to have been triggered. Germany is 5 to 10 years ahead of Massachusetts and California in the greening, the zero carbon, net zero agenda 2030, 2050. And now, currently, they are moving away from the electric, solar, and wind, and going head-on into natural gas and coal and oil and nuclear. So Massachusetts and California, the 2 leaders of the states, will be doing the same kind of thing. It's time for Westborough to look to the future and pay attention to what the green leaders are doing right now. For an example of what happened with the library building, the assessed value is $2.4 million, and so that allows $266,000 to be spent per year for the improvements. So looking for buy-in from the town citizens, employees, volunteers, town manager, LP, select board, Planning Board, Sustainable Westborough, Westborough Connects, Westborough Department of Public Works, Westborough Health Department, Advisory Finance Committee, Westborough Board of Library Trustees, Westborough School Committee, KP Law, who represents Westborough and over 1/3 of the cities and towns in the Commonwealth as their city solicitor or town council, Westborough Building Department, Building Commissioner, and of course, once again, the School Committee. Thank you.
That is exactly 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Is anyone else here for citizens' requests? Okay, we'll move right along. Next on our agenda item is a Universal Design for Learning update. It's always good to hear about the district initiatives that impact the culture of our learning. Daniel, I understand you'll be offering us a glimpse into some of this work in a brief update regarding Universal Design for Learning.
Yeah, gladly. I'm happy to do it. So this is basically the professional development focus for the year for the district. And I wanted to give you some context as to why we selected this as our focus this year, explain a little bit for those who don't know what Universal Design for Learning is, and then tell you a little bit about how the initiative is structured. And also, just for context, this is the first time we've done a district-wide initiative. All schools, all staff are actively involved in this particular initiative, and it's spread out over the course of the entire year. So sometimes the professional development will be different by grade level with slightly different foci, and like sometimes it'll be like, we'll have a couple of professional development days on one topic and then switch over to another topic. But this particular initiative is focused for the entire year. It's our focus. So this quote here about why UDL is important, I think is powerful. It basically, or not powerful so much as it's a succinct summary of what it's about, and then I'll elaborate in a bit. But incorporating universal design principles enhances an inclusive learning environment, and by that, this means you design, that's the universal pieces, everyone, all students, all different, sort of profiles in terms of learning profiles, and then you design your course in such a way to accommodate a wider variety of needs and eliminate potential learning barriers and unnecessary learning obstacles. So there's a lot that's packed in there to get at what is universal design for learning. It's how we design our learning environments so that all learners can access it. And so the reason we focused on it this year, I want to give you, 3 highlights here, is during the COVID crisis, we were really in this mode of focusing on how do we deal with offering our instruction in uniquely different ways than we're used to. The conversation was about online learning and, hybrid structures and such. And so thought it would be a good idea just to go back and focus on the fundamentals of teaching and learning and spend the year just focused on, what good instruction looks like, which is our wheelhouse here already. We have a lot of talented teachers and administrators, and we know what good instruction looks like, but the UDL framework helps you enter into rich discussions about the many different component parts. And so we wanted to, again, focus on all students having equal access to the curriculum, and UDL has a kind of common language and toolkit that we felt we could give our teachers that would be useful for having conversations about teaching and learning. So it's based on brain research and has been around for a couple of decades, if not more, since I should have researched the origin of it, but I know it's at least 20, it could be even 40 years, the concept of UDL. And basically the brain research that is out there that underpins UDL is that we all are unique in how we learn. And that there's, there's no two people who have the same exact way of learning. Some people, need hands-on, some people are auditory, they're visual learners, and there's just many different types of learners. And then the other insight that UDL takes from brain research is the existence of these 3 networks in our brains, and that all 3 of them need to be engaged at the same time for high-quality learning to take place. And I'll go into those networks in a minute. And that there then, therefore, some fundamental tools we can give to teachers to help them think about those 3 different networks. And so that's, what we're focused on when we're working on UDL. So I'm going to give you basically a graduate level course in 2 slides. The three interconnected networks, basically, these are, you probably see the visual piece here. These are like different parts of your brain that get fired when you're talking about these three different interconnected frameworks. So if you look over on the far right, there's the why of learning, like why are we doing this? How did this relate to what I already know? And getting engagement, so that there's multiple means of getting engaged and getting sort of interested and making meaning of what you're learning. But then there's the what of learning and the content piece, and a different part of the brain gets fired when it comes to like recognizing the information and making sense of the information that you're learning in your classroom. And then there's the how of learning in terms of expressing it and making, after you've made sense of it, how do you explain it back to show that you've learned it. So those, the color coding there with the green, the purple, the blue is when the UDL like learning structure for our faculty, and you go online, if you go to websites that talk about universal design of learning, you will see these three areas broken down: engagement, representation, and action, and color-coded according to the sections of the brain. And then under each of those, we're taught, we start to get into details about what does that look like in a classroom. And so like when you're getting into engagement, and there's three different boxes that are there, and in each of the boxes are details about unpacking, the engagement piece. So like, for example, if you're going to recruit interest, there's 3 bullet points there about, giving choice and optimizing autonomy, showing relevance, the value, making of what they're learning, making it authentic, minimizing distractions. So you can't learn if you're not engaged is like the first principle. And then there's like all different specific concrete discussion points about what that engagement would look like in terms of how you deliver your instruction. Our teachers are always thinking about that when they're thinking about their teaching, is like, what's the objective here, and how am I going to get the students engaged? And then how do you represent the material? And again, with the UDL work that we're doing, you get to dig down and we get to talk about component parts of a lesson in terms of how do you actively get students to make meaning of what it is you're presenting. And, there's the old school, just stand and deliver in a lecture, as opposed to, I'm going to give you a little bit of like some information up front, and then I want you to be in groups and like, sort of break down this information and share it with one another, and, then share it across your groups with other people, etc. So, different techniques that you use in the classroom to basically represent the information. And then there's like, how do you ultimately show that you've learned it? So each of these pieces are basically are what we're learning and talking about as a school district. And we're doing, so now I'm gonna move into like how we're doing that. So that's your graduate course is over. And so this is how we structured it for this year. And basically in October, we had a kickoff session where we brought the district together. We had a keynote speaker who is an expert on UDL come in, Mirko Chardin, and he did a fantastic job, very engaging, and a 2-hour presentation where basically there was just a taste of what it was that we were doing during the course of the year. And then throughout the year, what we have is each staff member is taking a 10-hour course. And they can either take the course, a self-paced course that's online, or they can engage with, they do an in-person course. And so they got a choice to sign up on a course that made the most sense for them, depending upon the level of expertise that they already have in UDL. Because like I said, it's been around for a couple of decades at least. And so some people have already taken some courses. And so if you are more at an intermediate or advanced level, you could take your 10-hour course at that, at a different level. And a UDL is very much about the principles of choice are embedded in it, like you should be able to have choices in terms of how you learn best. I mean, one of the fundamental teachings is that you as a learner need to know how you learn. And if you're going to do a self-paced course and that's more powerful and comfortable for you than working in a classroom environment where you're working with a group of people, then, take the self-paced course. But we also wanted to make sure that teachers had a chance to engage with one another given that they're taking different courses. And so during our course of the year, there's this sharing out opportunities where the 10 hours is not all at once, it's spread out. I'll show you the schedule in a moment. It's spread out over the course of the year, and you take the course for your course for a couple of hours, and then you have another day where we have an early release or a faculty meeting, and there's an opportunity to engage in what we talk about. We use the term jigsaw discussions, so you're mixing people like a jigsaw puzzle from different groups. So that's the general structure for how we set it up for the year. And here specifically, you can see how we fit in the 10 hours and where the jigsaws are taking place. And you can see the kickoff started on the first PD day, which is in October, and half that day was the presentation and half the day was going and doing the first 3 hours of learning in your course. So you can see where we're at now in that, we're approaching January 9th. So there's been 3 sessions thus far focused on UDL. And then several more are lined up for the rest of the year. And you can see how we paced it out. So that's, I knew that you wanted an update. I wasn't sure exactly what beyond this you would want. So I'd leave it open to questions. I just wanted to, present it to you so that you got a taste of what it was we're doing, and then, feel free to chime in.
Steve?
Yeah, and looking at that, one of the things that's kind of interesting is, have you asked for feedback in terms of the process that you're going through?
People love it.
Good.
Yes, we've asked for feedback, and people are very excited about it. You can't always concentrate on one topic during the course of a year, although we aspire to do that because we have a limited amount of time that's with the teachers. I know parents feel differently because it feels like there's a lot of early release days, but when you add it up, finding those 10 hours of time, very often we touch on different topics, but what they love about this is it's one topic throughout the year, and they get choice in terms of the format for them. And so when we've surveyed, we said we do what we call an exit ticket. At the end of each day when they're engaged in professional development, it's a very quick online survey. How did it go? What's working well? Suggestions for improvement. So yeah, we've got a good read on and several people have stopped both Amber and I and said they're very excited about how we structured this year.
I think one of the other nice pieces that the team designed when they started thinking about this was really a larger extended leadership team to design and guide the input. So there's a lot of voices at the table, and we've been able to take feedback along the way and adjust the schedule and work with people based upon the feedback we've gotten. So it's both structured but flexible, and I think the choice and design and pacing so far this year has really created some nice energy. So the goal is to sustain it and keep that balance between like structured new learning in a way that feels good, engaged to the work you do, not overwhelming, like all those pieces of balance, throughout the different pacing parts of the year.
Yeah, I have a question.
Steve?
I really appreciate this and love the direction that the district is going. I have a question about I guess it would be, okay, so, you brought in a really good expert, Mirko, who gave a presentation, and you're continuing on. Was there any thought given to contracting with him or someone from his organization or a similar organization who could be a point person for people who are building specific, who are maybe looking to really kind of use the expertise of someone who might be outside of the leadership within the building itself? Has there been any thought given to that?
Yeah, I mean, and when we designed this, there was a lot of back and forth about, how could we bring in outside expertise in a way that we've got a lot of people, 500 people, are having, close contact with people who are experts in this. And often districts will do like a train the trainer model. I mean, if you really want a,
That's the ideal.
Right, that's ideal. What we did instead was these online courses are actually created by the group that Mirko's from. Okay. And so there's videos and sort of like, experts who are delivering content. There's podcasts are built into it. There are readings that are built into it. So Mirko's group, which is the Novak Associates, and basically have created the courses. And then in addition to that, the train the trainer piece is we've got our curriculum coordinators and some of our department leaders have basically, they've created these small groups. So it's not as, and in an ideal world, we'd have an expert in every building at each of the days, but I'm not sure you guys would give me the budget to be able to afford that.
Right. Yeah. And so that's sort of what I was really asking was how have you thought through this?
And so those courses they cost some money, but they give us a greatly reduced price. And as far as the reach of the professional development, I'm pleased with how we were able to pull it off. And Mirko will be coming back in March, so he will be available for like a Q&A. And so, but thank you, I appreciate this.
Yeah, I agree as well that you're trying to always provide rich resources of options and also diversification of people's needs. I'm kind of intrigued and satisfied thus far that the courses provided multiple levels of entry for people across, pre-K all the way to 12 across content area, because it's basically philosophically grounded brain research and pedagogy. So, it's kind of universal across science, English, preschool, thinking deeply about how students construct learning, but there's also in the range of choices that I really like so that they can individualize it. And there's people that are taking much longer courses that wanted to go further and felt like they were ready to extend up. And I think the videos also introduce you to a range of other people. Like Katie does a range of welcoming interviews to the different vignettes, but they're hosting forward to you a range of articles and videos and things from across the profession. And so I think people are being exposed to some really rich thinking outside of Westborough, but also kind of held within Westborough, which
One
is
thing
nice.
I didn't mention too is that our leadership team, the administrators are all engaged in a course too. All the administrators are taking a 10-hour
We're all
course.
taking one too, yeah. So it's nice. I like the structure because you come into it and, well run, there's bad online courses and there's bad in-class instruction and there's great in-class instruction and great online courses. I would say for online courses, this has been really nicely framed. You come into it and you can pick, I want to read an article, I want to watch a video, I want to talk to someone. Like they give you ranges, which is kind of neat. So far, so good.
So I did look up the history, just because I could.
1980s?
1984. It was designed by two researchers from the Harvard School of Graduate Education, and they were incorporating the Center for Applied Specialized Technology back in '84. These two doctors. So that's where it began.
Was Kurzweil one of them?
What?
Kurzweil?
No, it happens to be Rose, Dr. David Rose and Dr. Ann Meyer.
Yeah.
Were the original. Yeah. Have you heard of them? Yeah.
One other thing I think to note is that when we speak to the fact that they really look towards engaging all learners, I think the student engagement piece isn't just getting students' attention, it's developing really highly autonomous learners who are self-reflected and knowledgeable around how they like to learn, what they need, and what stretches them, and kind of what levels of learning they can come in at. That takes years to develop, and one of the things you're looking at is an increased passivity in student engagement, and some of that's to do with a whole array of things, but looking to keep your instruction really modeled to develop students who step into their learning with autonomy and voice and authority to what they need, and working with the instruction such that they've got choices feels like the direction of the work. And it will take us time to get to that place. Like, we're starting to talk about what does it look like to have a high schooler that comes through the trajectory of that type of goal setting and choice and direction and sharing, from pre-K forward. So I think that's the excitement of this, is sustaining growth over time.
Exciting, very exciting to hear. This is isn't that why we're here? It's great to hear what the initiative is, and that I love when there have been many initiatives that have been ingrained throughout the culture of the entire staff, and it's exciting when we're seeing the forefront of a new age. It's great. So we're going to move right along. We're now coming to the capital plan update on our agenda. And as the school committee knows, projects for our buildings or larger expenditures now travel through the capital planning committee process. And recently, this committee met to update the 5-year plan plus an additional 10-year plan timeline. And the superintendent will walk us through these changes. And those at home, please note that our committee has received details of each of these projects in our packets for the 5-year plan, plus an Excel spreadsheet for FY29 to FY38. So we've been given time to review them on our own prior to this meeting.
So thank you. This is a short kind of put it on record for you, keep you in the process loop for the complexity and planning structure of the capital process. And it takes time and energy from lots of layers of discussion, working with the capital committee. Steve is our representative on that committee, and working with Kim Foster, who chairs that with a very active group of community members, works to lead us towards town meeting, where the selective choices of what goes into the capital structure for requested funding comes from structure, comes from process, comes from data. And I think it's important just to give you time to see it again and let you know that Dave is working with me and with Steve to always be updating it using the Buildings and Grounds team, Bob Ferguson and Kelly G. Capello. So I think what I wanted to do is just provide a brief verbal update to let you know that we had amended our original capital requests as we worked with the first pass through the capital committee, who then really wrapped their head around staging projects for design and then implementation, such that by the time we come to town meeting, we have a hard construction number that's based upon the preliminary design. And so we reshuffled components of the capital plan. And I just want to, which I walked you through before, so again, it's nice to hear it again, it takes time to wrap your head around it. We want multiple passes in the public for people to also kind of hear and remember that this takes time and process. And you can see that I just wanted to give you a preliminary note that the 3 items that we brought forward for 24, I believe have moved through preliminary acceptance and are on the list for capital. The capital committee feels that these are ones that should go forward. And so you see there, I'm just gonna call out just the 3. The Mill Pond roof restoration will be design dollars. We had a rough order of magnitude. It was like 1.2 million, 1.1 million. So they used like 12% and grabbed 132,000 as a rough order of magnitude for design dollars, so that we could then return to, and you see there the 1.1 million the next year to do the roof restoration at Mill Pond. Again, that was the project that would seal coat the roof after we assessed it with the laser assessment. that would give us an extension on that roof's life up to 20 to 25 years. A very smart investment of the $1 million to defer what we know are extensively complex and expensive roof repairs and extend the life and let us, again, pushing out your capital, getting the maximum from your investments. So that is the one that is moving forward effectively based upon the preliminary conversations. The second one, the Hastings roof design follows the same protocol. We had a rough order of magnitude assessment from the roof people at the 4.2 million. We held the 12% to take the 500,000 forward to get the design in place so that the following year we come forward to town meeting with a number that is biddable and ready to go. And then following that same process, we are currently in the design of ADA work and planning for the Hastings HVAC and ADA compliance work. And so the committee thought that we needed to have a placeholder of the 5 million until we get the bid documents back before town meeting. So we anticipate that number to adjust based upon the cracking of the bids. And the committee selected that as the holding number that they felt was logical based upon some of the escalation in costs that we had seen. I think both Steve and I are anticipating that will come in lower, but you know, again, it is what it is around these bid documents. So those are the three items, and then you'll see a similar rotation in how now each year you have design costs one year, impact of implementation costs the following year. And if you scroll quickly through that, Daniel, just so the public recognizes that for each of those items, there's a backup sheet, and those end up getting posted from Kim's committee when the capital becomes finalized, and it presents, and there's more backup documents on each of these. These are just the top coat sheets that show you the content. And for each of these, we have different studies and backups of the assessments that were done. So you've seen these before. I'm just letting him scroll through these so you can see those are the ones that we're bringing forward. This is a pretty long document, but it gives you the package of those pieces. All right, is that a good update? I just want to make sure you can kind of hold on to all the pieces as we're heading towards next steps. Any discussion or questions before I move to the next item?
Steve Durrett?
Summary sheet. I just want to point out that the 5 million that's shown here is the budget estimate for the entire scope. You may recall that the town already authorized about 3.5 million of that 5, and the difference is the anticipation of the bid amount, which comes out of the detailed design for ADA and the balance of the HVAC system. So it's different than the other two above it. The other two above it are just the design costs for that scope of work, such that if the town votes the design costs, we hire an engineer to develop the drawings so that in fact we can go out to bid prior to the town meeting where the project would be offered to the town to authorize. What that does is if we do it correctly, it eliminates the guesswork as to what the real number is that the town will have to pay for. And so using, quote, that process going forward, the rest of the numbers in this table are developed on that basis so that it's not a hunt and peck at town meeting. It's based, whatever the town chooses to do is based on a real fixed price job that could be awarded, and one would expect that the project would come in at that price.
Thank you.
So that's the background behind it.
Yeah, and two other pieces there. You know, it's always a process of keeping updated notations for what items need to go into process. And you're going to actually, we hope, give us a vote to approve a building assessment update which we would move forward on, which would then give us a fresh update on all of our other buildings, and we'll talk about that next. But my point in mentioning is all of this stuff isn't just pulled out of let's just make up a list of what we think needs to be repaired. It's pulled from a structured assessment of the buildings where they give you expected fatigue on the life expectancy, and they assess the building and look at all of the infrastructure pieces and give you guidelines. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So this is just the update on where this stands to let you know that the 3 items we carried forward, then modified and resubmitted are still in discussion, and I believe should move forward out of capital. And then the other document that I wanted to just share with you, because this, again, moved forward to the Capital Committee until we get a more complete assessment and updated items. We've been clear, and we've kept restating that once we get the fresh district-wide building assessment, we will reframe our 10-year request list against that current data and assessment from an outside party who comes in and looks at all of our infrastructure. Currently, until we get that, Kim Foster felt it was very important, as did the committee, that we at least transparently provided a framework of some initial list of the types of things that we're carrying forward based upon, needing work. And that is the set of item lists that you see here. Some of these have appeared before, and they're ones that are, rotating through. This is just a visible list of the types of maintenance and care of the buildings that you have to keep rotating over time. And again, all of these are fluid against a year-to-year assessment. Some we push out over time. But what is important is to begin that there's a no surprises rule, right? You don't just pop up with a request for a playground replacement or a roof replacement. These things need to be known and anticipated in the town, both to the school committee as the shepherds of that budgeting request, and to the capital committee that we collaborate with on what goes forward to town meeting. So this is just a pass for you to then say, look at that list, it's there. I anticipate it will get updated with a framework, but this is the one we submitted to the capital committee. Okay? I wouldn't get too caught up in this one now, but whenever we forward something into a record with another committee, I think it's just important for you to see it and to have it in your packet as well. Okay?
Thank you. No, this is fantastic because it's important for people to recognize that there are 6 buildings and there's infrastructure around within and outside, and there has to be an upkeep on an ongoing basis, and no one should be surprised, even 10 years from now, what is needed. So that's fantastic. Thank you for the report.
Okay.
We're going to move along to our next agenda item, which happens to be Building and Grounds Study Award bid. Just a little history. 15 years ago, there had been a Facilities, Building and Grounds Needs Assessment completed, known as the DRA report. It is now outdated and somewhat obsolete, and a new review needs completion for an updated status on building and grounds conditions and recommendations for necessary and/or potential repairs and/or replacement of building systems, such as HVAC, roofs, boilers, roads, equipment, etc. Seems like a good segue into this. So this brings us to our next agenda item, where a request for quotation and bid needs to be rewarded for a company to inspect the 5 public buildings, school buildings, excluding fails because it is new, for the purpose of assessing the existing conditions for the facilities and grounds, and for developing a long-range capital improvement plan. So this bid is now before us.
Yep. So just a couple additives. So thank you for that summary. The bid itself was put out to 6 vendors that we essentially had an initial agreement for their on-call services. And of the 6, 3 of the vendors came back with quotes or came back with bids. That is, Daniel, if you can just switch to the other, there you go. Of the 6, these are the 3 bids that actually came in. You'll see the 155 from Russo Bar, RMF did not submit, GGD did not.
Go to the top. Sorry, go back to the top, please. Russo Bar did, that's the one we're going to.
Russo Bar did assess, RMF did not. GGD did not. Litro did, as you can see their price. NV5 did, and then Gemmer did not. So through the 30B process and us awarding the bid to the most responsive bidder, we would like to seek approval to award the bid to
Scroll to the top again, David.
Russo.
Yeah.
Russo Bar Associates. So we are looking for your vote to move forward with that award to Russo, so we can actually start the process for, as we just discussed, about the assessment of the buildings because of the historic nature of it being 15 years ago. So this will give us a more current assessment of all the building, in short, from soup to nuts, from a capital expenditure standpoint.
And just to complement Dave's background on this, Bob Ferguson felt it was also the most responsive bid, not just the most cost effective, but it actually outlined the core components of the process based upon the RFP, which was very detailed. And he felt like they understood the scope of the work without throwing in a bunch of extras, and that the cost, while luckily was also the most cost effective, would allow us to accomplish the same depth that we had received from the original DRA report. And so I think awarding it will allow us, while the bid is still within the scope of its time frame to be viable, to move forward to establish a contract with them. And do you want to talk about breaking it into phase one?
Well, so I think from a financial standpoint, I think it's just cognizant to let you know that we're still basically defining the funding source. We're exploring all different kind of options. There will be multitudes of levers as the year goes on. As Lisa, as you may be aware, some credits related to transportation, all kind of things are going to come into the facilitation as to how we finance this. Even the potential for doing it over 2 years, meaning that we'll do some work initially in 23 and then finalizing it in 24. However, that is yet to be determined as we're moving forward, looking at, pulling every rock back and looking around every corner for resources to do this. However, because of the need and the impact and, the ongoing age of our buildings, we want to actually get this started sooner than later.
So I've been through the first one, and so what I see doing is breaking it into a phase one and a phase two, which would allow us to put it across 2 cost years. The first being the assessment, the building on-site assessment, the gathering of all the data would be phase one. That takes them a good amount of time. So that would be chunk one, would be to establish the on-site portion of the contract. And then when we cross into July 1, we would utilize the formation of the report and the finalization of the contract where they actually give us all of the information. So we would just stage it. It actually paces out exactly right, because Bob thinks it'll take them several months once we award the contract, sit down, nail out the pieces, then we bring them on site. It takes them quite a while. I mean, they look at everything. They're going into all of your HVAC, your boiler systems, your toilet areas, your interior, exterior roof. Like, they basically walk down the exterior and interior scope of each building. And from that, you get a comprehensive assessment of the staged age and wellness of all of your different buildings. And so pacing wise, it works out fine for us to do a phase one and phase two of the contract. It'll be irrelevant to them. It'll stage as one contract, but we will phase it over 2 budget cycles, which makes it workable for us to plan effectively.
Steve?
One question I have is, it looks like he's a one-man band. And so my question would be, did we solicit comments from any of his clients? And is this a field of work that he's done before?
Yes, my understanding is that Bob did his diligence related to referrals and all those information, ensuring that, his, again, responsiveness and responsibility of effort would be met by doing this. So I'm assuming that Bob cross all the T's, dot his I's, referring to references.
Well,
He knows he can decline bid, if they couldn't meet scope. And so he kind of looked at all of them. And my understanding is he did call his references and then demonstrate to Dave he felt confident that this was the bid we could award as both the low bid, but also one that met the scope of the work to be done.
I guess what I'm asking for is I'd like to see the summary of the clients that were reviewed to know that, in fact, it's not a wild goose chase, but the guy's really qualified to do this work.
Yep.
Since we're going to pin the future expenditures on an awful lot of information that comes out of this report. So if he could, if Bob could put together a memo on his a discussion with the various clients and the performance of this company in regards to the work scope that was assigned. I would appreciate that. That we have, as you remember, when we were doing the school interviews for Fails, we did in-depth reviews of each of the, at least 3 of the clients that the previous contractors, including the OPM and the construction manager, as well as some of the contractors that were involved. I think it stood us in good stead. I just don't know anymore what you're actually going to get when somebody signs up for a contract, particularly since others have declined on this work for whatever reason they did it. And that's also an interesting question to ask. Why did they decline? Obviously, it's a bid process that's similar to everybody, and we've worked with a couple of those people who did decline. So, it's a question I'd like to see. So on that basis, I would defer until the next meeting to authorize or to vote in favor of the award.
So you would want to get, just so I'm going to reframe what you want a reference backup on the companies he talked with to make sure that they can meet the scope of the RFP.
Yep.
And then a memo or a presence from him to answer those questions.
Yep.
Or both, if you want a combination of both of those, that's fine.
That would be useful, I think, for us, both for their performance and a process going forward as well.
Sure. So I'm certainly comfortable with that. It's an important award, but we want to then also keep it moving forward. So we can ask Bob for that.
Steve, I was just going to say, I suggest you visit their website because it does list all of the schools that they've worked with, so you can get a sense of where they've been.
It's different than that. It's calling the clients that they performed for, rather than what they say they've done. I mean, we've seen a recent elected official from New York State in deep trouble because what he said isn't
Yes.
what was there.
Yes. Yep.
So my experience is it's a very good thing to ask because sometimes you find out things that nobody actually wants to write down.
Yeah, we'll confirm the reference work and let Bob provide a memo on those discussion points for you by the next meeting. I think we can do that.
Yep.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yep.
I did appreciate on this bid, he had a complete project organization chart of who was working on what, everything from the project architect, the structural engineer, the assistant project manager, another assistant project manager. It sounds like I think you're right, though. I think they work as one team, and they also have a consultant engineer, and they have a technician specialist in construction monitoring. But I didn't see that necessarily. And then he has a resume of each of those people underneath that.
Yeah, well,
Now, whether it's true or not, you're right.
Is that although those individual, let's say, sub-consultants are offered as part of the proposal, they aren't necessarily part of the contract. So, and again, as we know, when you have a whole set of tiered contractors, the performance of any one of them is dependent upon the specific individual that's hired. And the net outcome of such a summary from previous clients is the good and the bad. So to the extent that we know the good and the bad, as you negotiate the final contract, you can include, let's say, fixes to deal
Or
with.
time limits. I mean, we know how to build a contract that keeps us protected, where we've got deadlines and holdback of funds and payment until we receive benchmarks and stuff like that. But regardless of what kind of contract Dave would develop that would keep us safe, I would think that certainly as the person who carries a lot of our construction work, we're happy to ask Bob to come back with a clear reference check around those items.
It's good to check. No, I appreciate you asking the question, and it can't hurt to follow up and make sure that it's what it appears.
A little bit of patience at this time
Yeah.
can pay off
No, that's
very well
true.
in the future.
Are there any other questions? So I don't know if you heard that we're going to have a reference check and then potentially vote on at the next meeting. Okay.
I'm going to tell O'Brien you left early.
We've had many visitors today in our meeting. Lots of attendees. We appreciate when those high school students come and they, do a quick study on school committee.
Daniel and I should ask for one of the reports to bring back to you what they actually said.
Yeah, you can get a 360.
We should
out of them.
call, that's right, we could call Frank O'Brien and ask him to give us an update on what kind of report he gets.
So we're going to move right along. Amber, I'm going to have you take over this, the AFC discussion of, the pre-discussion for a visit with Advisory Finance.
Again, I think important to just give you a quick verbal update. This is always on public record. It shows people our process. I think it's just important. We're going to be heading towards a budget summit coming up on, I should have held my...
The 29th?
The 26th, and that's a large meeting where there's a lot of discussion and in-depth assessment of budget proposals where all the key players are coming together. And because we have a very complex budget with lots of moving parts, we try to make preliminary opportunities to talk to AFC. So Dave and I will be attending their meeting on the 9th. At 7
p.m.
And that's a hybrid meeting, so you could watch from home. You can also join us if you'd like, but we'll be carrying forward a first pass on discussion. And I think it's always good to kind of hear the range of questions that we get asked. I just wanted to let you know that I'll be using the presentation that we used for budget presentation 5. And I would take any feedback that you want to email me on things you want me to add. And I think something I am planning on adding is some of the cost-saving measures, alternative funding sources we work to leverage, looking toward, I know Mike had asked, Mike Breddy, the chair, had really wanted us to make sure that we're clear about the Chapter 70 as a kind of a piece of educational update. And you'll notice if you get into that great budget book that we provided, you'll see Dave and I prepped, I think, a more in-depth entry that shows you a little bit about, I've never mentioned Chapter 70 in there, but I tried to extend that based upon the feedback we've gotten just to show, these are funding sources that are anticipated coming in to support education this year. And so I might pull some I might take those and make a slide or two. And then I also showed in that section a preliminary pass on our per pupil expenditure as it relates to our comparison towns. You tend to see that in our presentations when we go to town meeting, and some of what we'll prep to go to the summit. But I might take a couple of those early and just, pull those because I have them. So if you read the budget introduction that Dave and I wrote, you might, if you have thoughts, I'm going to probably pull from that and add 1 or 2 additional slides. But AFC will also have their budget book by then. They'll probably get it tomorrow or Friday. So I just wanted to let you know that we'll be in attendance. We're going to take the same kind of general collaborative approach of providing an updated overview and then let them surface questions, and then that will help guide our preparation for the summit.
Okay.
All right.
So she's looking for feedback from us for that presentation, number 5.
And I don't want you to have to look at it again. You've seen it multiple times. It was for you. So I just want you to know that that's what I'm going to use, and it's in your packet.
Okay.
And it's also in the back of your book that you've just received. But I just think if you think there are things you really want me to emphasize, Dave and I can make sure that the two of us are kind of focusing AFC when we get in there to areas that we think we want to highlight.
Yeah, I was going to say, just a quick question/comment. I know you're going to include some additional information about Chapter 70. What about Medicaid and all that money that we work to bring back to the town? Is that a figure that we ever show or talk about?
We can certainly put it in there, just so they know.
Is that one of those
we're-
numbers that comes like a year later, kind of?
Yeah, it comes in installments, and it goes into four installments across the span of the year, because we're always submitting against service delivery for the year. Medicaid presents the reimbursement, and it goes to the town. It follows the exact same methodology of the structure of the ambulance work to give back. They do the same type of submission to healthcare and get a portion back based upon the part of the service to the town. So I can certainly add a slide on that.
Yeah, I just know that the school system dedicates staff time and effort to bring that money back. I just feel like maybe that's an important number to also share.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense in terms of it's one of the buckets that, essentially that the effort, from not only the school level, but central office level to recruit that information. And then that money goes to the town. But there's also a question, additional question would be to just show that we are billed for that relationship we have with, I'm going to draw a blank on the vendor's name.
The company we use.
We partner with another company to actually, who gets that information and provides the actual reimbursement from the state. So, but there is a quarterly bill for that as well.
Yeah. But it speaks to just, I think, the relevance of mentioning it is to help people understand that we're committed to doing what we can to push funding back towards the town side against the cost of education in the community. And I think it can be an invisible piece. It's a more of a sustained shared effort commitment focus that I think it's important that AFC see that we're invested in that. If we declined to put the effort into it, we would get zero. We bring effort to it because we're committed to that cost saving for the town. It's fine that it goes back to the town. It's all one pot of money, and we are always emphasizing that. And so I think it's important to realize we're doing what we can to contribute back into it. So we can add that in there as well.
It's just, just because we do put the effort in to get it, that I think it's important to show.
Steve, you have a question?
Yeah, my question is, how does it come back? Does it go to is it a cherry sheet return, or is it a check to the town?
It's a specific payment from Medicaid to, I think that goes to a specified account that it's allotted for, and then it goes to general fund.
I don't know exactly where they
I was just wondering how it gets there. In other words, does it go directly into the general fund, or does it go, does it come back by a...
I can double check, but I believe the letters we get, it gets routed, it doesn't come to us and then...
I know that.
Yeah, Leah would know. I mean, the relevant point of the accounting process is that Medicaid pays them directly, and they manage it appropriately, and then it goes to the general fund. And so I think, again, there's probably some process pieces that Leah would articulate in terms of how they do that, but Medicaid only makes the payment directly to the town. And
one of the things that historically has always been, I guess, a mystery to most of the financial interested parties in the town is where all these things go and how they get there. For example, Chapter 70 money, which is actually a refund to the town of school budget process, never comes to the school committee. So I'm thinking that a diagram that would answer those questions, which is, okay, we do this, we do that, and we generate money that comes back, and it comes back this way, and it comes back that way. So that, in fact, if you look at some of the things that go round and round, about $9 million worth of state funds comes back to the town on the basis of the school department, even though we don't get it. And so, with that understanding, I think, let's say it might be a warmer reception, if you will, at town meeting. That's what I'm thinking.
I think everyone just needs to understand the process, and it's important that we, as we come into town meeting and into our summits, take opportunities to be clear and articulate about the budget sources and how everything is working. as we seek commitment from voters. I think the other part of that is it's the same process that Christie uses. They're very thoughtful about articulating the number of accounts that they have that help to pay for the functions of the town, and it's our job to, hold up the pieces for the functions of the school. And I think over the last several years, we've done a very nice job to get to a place where, there is a good level of parallel clarity in very complex budgeting work. So you're talking about a lot of funding sources, a lot of grants, a lot of moving parts. And I think we've certainly stabilized the process enough so that people feel like they can wrap their head around it annually. So we'll start prepping. I think we feel ready to come in and unpack the questions, which is very helpful because it really does help us guide what we provide informationally.
Well, I appreciate that feedback from Kristen and Steve, just because I think that for presenting our budget, it's really important to understand the process and procedure that it goes through. And I think that it seems very complicated to a lot of our citizens when we discuss it. So as much clarity as we can give, I think the better it would be. And so you've brought up some really good points. So we're going to move right along to our next agenda item. We thought we would have an emergency shelter placement update.
So I'll just make a public comment that, we have been receiving ongoing communication from the state level and you've been reading about it in the paper, the increase in homelessness and people losing housing and looking toward emergency placements. The state has a must-house family policy, and therefore, if they can't find permanent housing, they defer to emergency placement until they can get other housing. The way they manage that is to place families across the Commonwealth in some established settings that they feel they can work with, get families to, and provide, support. We received a call in the summer that we anticipated being an emergency shelter site for a number of families. They called us again. We did several meetings. I thought it might happen in the fall, and then it did not. We then received another cycle of calls right before Christmas break indicating that we would receive 5 to 12 families in emergency placement, and we started preparing for that, just working with the admin. And then we haven't received any more information. So typical to the cycle of how that works, I think they might have placed all families elsewhere, but we would remain in the queue as a town that would then at some point receive some additional homeless families. That said, we do have a range of homeless families that are always part of our school community, and we've seen an increase in that across the fall and have taken in 6 or 8 additional families who have sought short-term housing due to homelessness. So certainly speaks to the structure of, the stresses of the economy. And so we'll be ready when they come. They do, at a state level, provide some additional funding they already have some embedded homeless supports, transportation, but this would come with some school-based support if needed for services that might be required. But again, it would evolve. I would keep you updated. But as of now, I think it's just good to know. You wouldn't be surprised if at another meeting I say, hey, we got 5 families, it happened, and they're here, and here's how it's moving forward. Again, every family is just a family, and we're happy to just enroll them and move forward. But I think, if you get a bunch in the middle of the year, you just need to be ready to make some adjustments. So for now, I think we're status quo, and I'll keep you updated.
Okay. Steve?
So specifically, our interest is that these families would potentially arrive in town and those students would now be in the school system.
Yes.
Beyond that, it's either the state's responsibility to find a place for them to live or
yes.
Okay.
Yes, and this is considered short-term housing, but I think for school districts that are part of the management structure, they didn't just contact us, they contact the town, they contact Christie, and they basically work around collaborative service planning. And so Pat Purcell and other people, Jeff, are just working to make sure that we feel prepared as a town if you have community members who might need additional supports. The homeless placement process allows homeless families to opt to be transported to their last permanent resident community. So if you have a student who's established in a town and then loses their home and get placed with us for emergency short-term shelter, the state pays to transport them, should they select, to their home community of last homing. And so many homeless families never impact enrolling at the district level because they remain in their home school setting, hoping to get more permanent housing back in their original setting. In some cases, it appears that some families in their displacement are opting to try to roll into the schools just because it provides more stability and less transport, and they're finding they're placing families further. And the transportation issues that we've had around busing have pressed them to be clear that even if they place families, they might have trouble accessing transportation. So it's shifted the practice a little bit such that then they're opting to go ahead and enroll in the home community while they're there, since they can be assured of getting to school. I think that's very smart. So again, there's nothing particularly, we enroll kids all the time. I think we've enrolled 250 kids since the start of the year or something. So, you know, we're always enrolling students. That's just part of our business. But I think that, you know, the state, because they were directing it to us at atypical housing, let us know. So I'm just updating you. And beyond that, they're just kids coming to school, and we'll keep you in the loop. Okay?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll move right along to our next agenda item, the school committee goals update and discussion. So like the superintendent goals that are reviewed mid-year and then at the end, it is appropriate that we, the school committee, review our annual goals. It's important to note that we established these goals at our retreat in September. Admittedly, we did not order them by priority. I don't know if we didn't think to do that, as all have tremendous importance and addresses what 5 different school committee members deem imperative. Additionally, I want to clarify number 3, if we were looking up at that on the screen, which speaks to our strategic plan. Within this extensive, detailed 5-year strategic plan, there is an array of academic initiatives and goals. So monitoring this plan is, I believe, the school committee's way of addressing academic excellence and also direction of much of the district as a whole. Its placement as number 3 is in no way states its importance as less than number 1 and 2 on the list. Recent feedback seemed to suggest such and was misinterpreted. Additionally, I wanted to note that Steve Batchelor and I will be meeting with Andrea Macknick as members of our school committee policies committee soon to review and make recommendations regarding school committee policies, tweaking and changing like we do on a regular basis throughout a year. So that speaks to school committee goal number 1. We can assess that at the time. And then we'll bring recommendations forward to the school committee at the end of January or beginning of February at our meeting. So I'd like to open it up to feedback from our committee as you read through our goals, whether you believe we are on track in meeting these goals for the year, and is there anything we need to address, concentrate on, or tweak in our actions to meet these goals. Any thoughts?
Well, if I think about the meetings that we've had since our retreat that we created these goals, I can see that in our meetings we are touching on all 7 of these at various times. Like tonight, we talked about capital planning and we talked about assessing the district's buildings and initiating that process. Like I can see a lot of this work, you know, obviously the UDL work is part of the strategic plan. So we are bringing these goals to life during our meetings, I feel.
Steve?
Yes, I would comment that, in fact, we spent about 5 hours creating this list in great discussion, the pros and cons of each one of these items, and how it fit together in terms of what the school administration and the school committee can do. I think it is a very good representation of what we feel is important stuff for the school system within the jurisdiction of the school committee and how we function under state law.
Yeah, I want to echo those comments that we spent considerable amount of time thinking comprehensively about what the school committee ought to do, what its goals should be. And I think this accurately reflects the kind of comprehensive work that we do. They're not ordered in any particular way. So I think that needs to be at the forefront in people's minds, that this is a comprehensive list. And so everything that we, these are not mutually exclusive categories or numbers, that all of these things overlap. And this gives a good, I think, full view of the kind of work that we do.
Okay.
I'll
Amber, do you want to give thoughts?
just a note, we've got the 5-year strategic plan update, which will be coming forward to you, I think early February. I think it's the first week in February. It's coming up at one of your meetings. And so you'll see, again, areas of overlap. You have a lot of basically budget and building and capital work embedded here, which is core mission for you. I think your work at looking at the impact of the green initiatives, both on its budget impact, benefits, and drawbacks, and areas of focus is, as one of the major energy impact people in the town, it will continue to be an area of focus that we need you to think about. So I feel like to Steve's point, the long in-depth discussion you had to talk about where you wanted to place your energy, and based upon the scope of your job as a school committee, you've hit the big ones. And given the amount of work of completion that you brought to capital planning over the last 6 years in particular, I think it's time for a fresh reassessment of that, and that's going to become a big part of your work to kind of articulate the trajectory of the needs of the district in terms of capital for our next 5-year future. So I carry the curricular initiatives and the performance-based academic excellence initiatives through the strategic plan and the work that Daniel and the team do. And then you've got Dave, tracking the funding arm of this work. So I think you're on point. I think by the end of the year, you'll have hit on these, but it helps me to see them and see how they overlap to the goals I articulated and the work of the strategic plan. So next pass in February, I'll hold these in my mind as well and try to target my comments.
Okay, that would be great. Good, excellent. Okay, moving on to our last regular session agenda item, the Assabet Valley Collaborative second quarterly update. As many know, Amber serves as chair of the the Assabet Valley Collaborative Board, and we are receiving the annual report from December 16, 2022, plus an annual financial end-of-year FY22 report.
So I don't think we need to, again, these are more for record for you, and just an important note that around the fiscal health and also the planning and strategic work of the collaborative to remain relevant and to keep their programming functional and within budget guidelines. They have to submit everything to the state. We had our audit was clean, a very productive meeting right before the holiday break, and it provides for you that completion as part of what has to go in to her annual report. I think the annual report captures a lot of the challenges and strengths of the collaborative. If that's something that interests you, you can read it and see the range of work that was done at the collaborative over the last year, and I believe that it captures it really effectively. So I would just ask that you receive these two reports as probably the most important anchor reports you get on the collaborative during the year. But again, I think for people watching, they just have to understand that when you're the member of a collaborative, we pay to be a member. We have participatory requirements and then also rights. And the school superintendents of every collaborative community are the board of the collaborative. And so, they follow some of our same parallel practices, and they've just completed some important benchmarks. So that's the report on the collaborative.
Any questions? Okay. So I have to admit, I may have misestimated the length of these agenda items when we planned this. when we plan this meeting.
Better in the favor of a short meeting.
There's nothing wrong with that.
We are way ahead of schedule. I'm here to tell you that the next regular session meeting of the school committee is scheduled for Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. And do we have a motion to move into executive session?
Yes, I'd make a motion that we meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the teachers unit, because an open discussion would be detrimental to our negotiation efforts. And under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to review and approve executive session minutes from December 14th, 2022.
Second.
I declare that an open meeting would have a detriment. Did you already say that? Never mind. Roll call, any discussion?
No.
Roll call vote.
Bachelor, yes.
Vincent, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Durant, yes.
And I now declare we are in executive session, and we ask everyone to now exit the room unless you have been invited to attend this executive session.